So hello guys, welcome to my channel Study Pick. So today I'm going to study on the topic of BBA 4th semester psychology. So let's begin. So over here we will study about content. So there is behavioral science and psychology, psychology as empirical science, goals of psychology, perspective, scope of psychology, applications and its importance, and method of psychology study, where we will study about case study, survey, naturalistic observation, experimental method, and correlational method. So introduction to psychology. Psychology is science of behavior and mental process. It is derived from two Greek words where psyche means souls and logos means discourse. So literal meaning is soul and study. So it is the science of soul. It is viewed as science of behavior and cognitive process. It is divided into two parts: behavioral science and psychology as empirical science. So talking about behavioral science and psychology, there is philosophical stage, structural stage, behavioral stage, modern stage, and psychology as empirical science, where psychology is as science, psychology studies behavior, psychology studies mental process. So talking about behavioral science and psychology, so first, it encompasses discipline that explores activities and interaction among the organisms. It involves systematic analysis of human and animal behavior through controlled experimental observation. It includes psychology, cognitive science, anthropology, organizational theory. It is included in two categories as neural, which means decision, and social means communication. So there is certain misconception like psychology is based on the analysis of facial expression. They can predict the future. They are the mind readers and they predict future. So talking about the philosophical stage of behavioral science, where it is concerned with soul and mind. So psychology is science of mind, which means soul. So like soul, word mind is vague and confusing. Soul is mystical, which can't be touched or seen. Mind includes only subjective aspects of behavior. Next we have structural stage, where psychology is as a science of consciousness. So Wilhelm Wundt, who was the founder of first psychological laboratory, and E.B. Teichner, he was the founder of structural of social of psychology. It focused on the inner sensation, feelings, and thought of human. They advocated psychology as consciousness, where consciousness is present experience and awareness. Sigmund Freud founded that human personality has conscious, subconscious, and unconscious mind. The unconscious consists of 9 out of 10 of mind determining the normal activities. Now we have behavioral stage, where it is the science of behavior, where John B. Watson defined psychology is a science of behavior. It studies internal behavior like feelings, perceiving, learning, imagining through external behavior. It didn't agree with the role of heredity and innate disposition in the growth and development. So we can see from the table SR and SOR. So in SR, this paradigm believes that organisms respond according to the nature of stimulus. Watson, Pavlov advocated on this concept. Organism is passive over here. It is criticized for undermining the role of organism in responding to stimulus. It does not include mental process. Next we have SOR. This approach believes that the nature of stimulus and nature of organism play role in particular response of organism. Woodworth advocated on this concept. The organism plays the active role. It includes the role of organism in responding. It includes mental process. Now we have overt behavior and covert behavior. So talking about overt behavior which are directly observable, like talking, running, blinking, scratching, they are observable properties such as form, intensity, duration, frequency. It is perceived by our unaided public senses, measured and classified. Talking about the covert behavior, it refers to the responses that cannot be directly observed. For example, feeling, glandular reactions, they go inside the skin, including the private events such as thinking and imagining. And it is detected by our interference or through the use of special techniques and devices, for example, heartbeat. Now we have topic of modern stage of behavioral science. So it is the science of behavior and mental process, where Miser DZ defined as the science of behavior and mental process, the scientific study of behavior and mental process. The psychology describes, predicts and explains the human behavior, and the scientific method enables to find the honors and more valid than speculations. Now we have psychology as empirical science. So talking first about psychology as science. So it is the systematic study of human behavior. It uses scientific methods like experimental observational method. It studies the cause and effect relationship. It is prediction on human behavior that is dynamic and complex. Next we have psychology studies behavior. So it refers to the physical activity of an organism. Overt body movement and covert internal glandular process are included here. It studies behavior in all the circumstances, either as individual, social, group, normal, abnormal, or behavioral. Now we have about psychology studies the mental process, where psychology is the study of mental process of organism. It refers to private thoughts, emotions, feelings, and motives. It studies mental activities, either voluntary or involuntary, or conscious or unconscious. The mental activity includes mental behavior with experience. The modern psychology studies the process and experience. Now we have goals of psychology. So first is to describe. So psychology collects the information through scientific method, the information collected through human behavior, which enables to describe the behavior accurately. Next is understand. So we understand the human behavior and the mental process. The explanation of psychology is based on theories. The psychology develops theories and principles of behavior. Our knowledge and understanding of the stress in working environment is enhanced by the theory. Next we have prediction. So psychology predict the future and tell in advance about what would happen in the future regarding the human, depending on the facts, principles of behavior, and various influencing behavior. It helps to predict the behavior. Next we have influence and control. So psychology aims at influencing the behavior, make desired behavior to occur or not. What can be done to bring up an aggressive child or improve the learning. So the factors affecting outcome of the behavior enables to exercise the control. Next we have perspective in psychology. So there is behavioral perspective, so cognitive perspective, psychodynamic perspective, biological perspective, evolutionary perspective, socio-cultural perspective, and development perspective. So talking first about behavioral perspective, so it is based on the proposition that organisms do acting, thinking, feeling related to observable. It is studied by industrial psychology, organizational psychology who are interested in work setting. It focuses on the deal of attention on overt behavior. Next we have cognitive perspective, where it is focused on memory, thought, reasoning for human behavior. For example, to write a cover letter, we don't select the theme, we focus in the positive experience to write a supportive letter as we recall crucial information to carry out the work. So it needs to attention to cognitive process to understand the behavior. Next we have psychodynamic perspective. So it focuses on the role of hidden, unconscious and internal process for studying human behavior. So Sigmund Freud developed his own theory where he believed that behavior is influenced by vast area of unconsciousness. The unconscious thoughts are the threat, sexual and aggressive in nature. It is revealed by dream, emotion or slip of tongue. Next we have biological perspective, where it changes inside the body, which is covert and overt. Thinking, listening, music, hunger, anger, experience, sexual arousal, etc. are example of it. The activity in our brain, nervous system, hormones released by the glands induce this process. It helps in the study of the principle of biology, physiology, genetic, and development. Next, we have evolutionary perspective, where the modern psychology rejects the extreme view and adopts the balanced position. So the human have evolutionary history which equips with inherited tendency, which lead to emergence of evolution. It focused of psychology mechanism for human behavior. Next, we have socio-cultural perspective, where culture is important for the human behavior. Individual perception, feeling, action, etc. are highly influenced by the social and cultural factor. For example, Japanese executive and the wife wanted to buy the best house. They got the best house, but they did not purchase because their boss house was just only few blocks away from them. It is a socio-cultural perspective. Next, we have developmental perspective, where it includes human growth, physical, emotional, intellectual, social, and perceptual growth, where it focuses on the changes in the behavior and cognitive process. It describes characteristics of psychological change. Now we have the scope of psychology. So scope of psychology we have divided into two categories: basic, theoretical or pure, and applied. So talking about the basic psychology, so it is concerns theoretical knowledge, principal facts and research. It studies of sensation, memory, learning, reasoning, prejudice, and it is further divided into developmental psychology. So it studies the process of growth and maturation. It includes physical, social, motor, emotional, language, problem solving ability, moral development. It studies the quantitative and qualitative changes in the physical, mental, and emotional aspects. It studies the human development and describes and explains and predict the behavior. Next, we have applied psychology. So it is concerned with the application of the principle and theories of psychology. So it is further divided as consumer psychology. So it understands the motivation of the consumer. It applies the knowledge to influence the buying behavior, and it deals with what products should be supplied and how to launch it. Next, we have clinical psychology. It is concerned with the prevention, diagnosis, treatment of psychological disorder. 30% of psychology involves in clinical psychology. It helps in solving the problems like mental disorder, criminal behavior, drug addiction, mental retardation, and family problem. Next, we have counseling psychology, where the individual in solving problem, counseling in emotional, educational, vocational, career, and personal problems. It helps individual groups and teenagers, unemployed, and refugees. Further, under the basic psychology, we have abnormal psychology, where it is the branch of psychology to study the abnormal behavior. It studies the neurotics, psychotics, and abnormal behavior behaved by the intelligence, emotional instability, and character deficits. Next, we have social and socio-cultural psychology. So it studies the psychology behavior occurring in a group. It understands on how individual is influenced by other people. It finds out individual affects behavior. Next, we have experimental psychology. It studies the process of sensation, perception, learning, memory, thinking about the world. It is concerned with the how behavior modify, routine modification, process informations, and how sensory system works. It allows people to experience what is going on. Under applied psychology, we have organizational, industrial, and personal psychology, where it studies the structure and function of the organization. The advertisement in the selection, hiring, and placing training. It helps in boosting the morale. It increases productivity and establishes good relation among the workers. Next, we have health psychology. It is concerned with the physical health. The principle is to prevent and treat the physical disorder, to avoid the provide awareness and understanding to a healthy attitude of the population. It highlights physical health, sanitation, and mental health problem. It focuses on the different technique to reduce the health hazards. It includes spiritualism and religion are important part of it. Now we have application or importance of psychology. So it is important to get motivated, improve leadership skill, become better communicator, better understanding towards others, improve memory, become more productive. We have methods of psychology. So first we have case study, survey, naturalistic observation, experimental methods, and correlational method. So talking about case study, it is the descriptive method in which in-depth analysis is made up of a single unit. It also known as case history or clinical method. The complete information is gathered and research method is used. The investigator use test, checklist, and questionnaires. The comprehensive and useful method, it requires a specialized skill for collecting informations. So there are some advantages and disadvantages of it. Talking about the advantages, there is detailed in-depth data recorded, suitable to study rare behavior, useful for diagnosis, therapy, and practical problems. It ensures research to trace out the detail of the past life. Talking about the disadvantages, it is difficulty in legitimacy established between cause and effect relation, lacks generativity as a single unit is studied. It consumes more time, effort, and money, not possible in a big manner. Now we have about survey. So it is the descriptive method in which participants asked series of questions to respond. The questions are based on attitude, value, habits, and character. It is mailed, postponed, it is mailed, telephoned, interviewed. This method studies political attitude, consumer preference, human liberalization, and healthcare. There are following steps to be performed, such as identification of problem, formulate objectives, identify sample population, determine sample size, construct questionnaires, collection of data, interpret data, and research reports. So talking about survey, there are certain advantages and disadvantages. Talking about the advantages, the respondent can be questioned fairly. It is flexible to permit observation, interview, and mail. It is versatile as information collect from the characteristics, socio-economic data, and attitude. Next we have disadvantages. So large scale survey is expensive in nature. The gender, age, and ethnicity may affect the data. The structured question may miss some of the information. Meanwhile, unstructured questionnaires are unstandard. Now talking about naturalistic observation, it is also called as objective, systematic, and observation method. The collection of the data by observing the events. The observation by the participants can be participatory or non-participatory. There are certain steps to be performed in this method, such as raising the problem, unanswered questions, observation of behavior, which means examine and perception, noting a behavior means recording, interpretation and analysis of data means establishing the cause and effect relation, and then generalization, which means interpretation of results. Next we have advantages and disadvantages. Talking about the advantages, it is much richer information. There is high ecological validity and researchers do not have to interact, they can simply watch them. Next we have lack of control over the condition, about how the situation is going on. It is slow and expensive. The internal experience may interfere, such as biasness and prejudice. Now we have experimental methods. So the researchers systematically alter one or more independent variables and to determine the changes that influence some behavior take place under the artificially controlled environment. All the factors are constant and only one factor is varied. To find out the cause and effect relationship, the experimental design involves raising problems, formation of hypotheses, distinguish between dependent and independent variables, controlling environment, analysis of data, and verification of hypothesis by experiment. So talking about advantages and disadvantages, advantages are it helps to establish cause and effect relationship. It allows replication, which means repetition of the experience so that variability can be estimated. It is the repetition of all the treatment combination to be compared in the experiment. There is good control of extraneous variable. Talking about some of the limitations, it requires well-equipped laboratory tools and equipments. It is difficulty in attaining the cooperation and attitude. The ethical concern may be violated, and the conclusion derived is limited to artificial situation. So talking about the correlational method, the extent of relation between two or more variables. It is studied on the basis of correlational coefficient. For example, growing old results in gaining weight, interest rate drops, and stock rises. It ranges from -1 to +1. +1 means as variable increases, the another variable also increases. -1 means if one variable increases and another decreases. So talking about some of the advantages and disadvantages, the advantages are that it allows the study of hypotheses that can't be examined directly. More data and more variable are collected directly. It helps in prediction and problem of interpretation. Talking about the disadvantages, the interpretation of the result is difficult. Cause and effect cannot be established easily. Causality is uncertain. The variables and other the one's interest. So thank you. This is the end of the chapter 1 of psychology. So like, comment and subscribe. You guys are amazing. Keep reading.